It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're wrapping up March by taking a look at March 29th, 2002, with 4 notable movies to take a look at today. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. We'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that's the latest from David Fincher, starring Jodie Foster and a young Kristen Stewart. That is Panic Room. I mean, the trailer kind of pretty much explains the movie, but you have Jodie Foster as a recently divorced woman and her daughter, Sarah, played by Kristen Stewart, having bought a new home in New York City. When they tour around the mansion, they come across the Panic Room, a room so secure that no one can get in. So you have 3 burglars that come in, played by Forest Whitaker, Jared Leto, and Dwight Yoakam, which is a weird combination when you really think about it. So Jodie Foster's character and her daughter make it into the Panic Room, but all the troubles don't stop there, as the criminals know where she is, and what they require the most is in the house is in that very room. And this movie knows how to create tension. This is a movie that I've really come to admire more and more ever since I saw it. Because first time I saw it, I was just kind of like, all right, that was kind of amusing, but nothing too significant. But the more you really look at this movie, and the more you look at the way that they actually put this together, like, it really looks impressive the way they handle this, because this film actually uses CGI to create the illusion of the film's camera moving through the house's rooms, and it's done in a way where you got to remember this is still 2002, and while we were using practical effect, more CG in movies, like it's impressive that the way they were able to use it in this particular fashion, where it doesn't feel like it's fake. Like you can tell that in some way they actually did this with a camera, even though it was done through a computer. And funny thing about this movie is that Nicole Kidman was actually original cast in this, but she had to leave because she was having aggravations from a previous injury. But she's actually in the movie as a cameo, as one of the voices for one of the characters. I guess there's a character in the movie when he gets a phone call, and it's actually Nicole Kidman doing the voice. So it's kind of cool they actually let her back in this movie in some way, shape, or form, even though it's not technically as the main lead. But Jodie Foster and Kristen Stewart really work very well, and you get to see that Kristen Stewart can actually be a really good actress. The Twilight movies basically just went to show you that the movies were just bad because not even the actors that they had in there could save that movie. I mean, think about it. Kristen Stewart has proven she's a better actress than the Twilight movies have. Robert Pattinson has proved that. Anna Kendrick has proved that. Taylor Lautner, not so much, mostly because he's been doing nothing but bad Adam Sandler movies since leaving the Twilight film. So that should pretty much tell you that, okay, maybe not everybody in that got out of there unscathed yet. Taylor Lautner's probably not that great of an actor to begin with, but we're talking about a completely different thing altogether. But the weird thing about this is that is the weirdest pairing ever. Forest Whitaker, Jared Leto, Dwight Yoakam. These are 3 very different people who are supposed to be working together as burglars. And it's just like, it really does not make a whole lot of sense, but in the movie, it kind of works to the film's advantage. And like I said, David Fincher creates a lot of great tension with this film. There's a lot of great moments where you really don't know how the hell these people are going to get out of the situation that they're in. And the film does a fantastic job of keeping you on the edge of your seat all throughout the film. I mean, it's really well done how they handle this. And you could definitely tell that Fincher took a lot of inspiration from classic Hitchcock. I mean, from the opening title sequence alone, it feels like something out of Rear Window. That's how incredible the visuals in this movie look. The way the film looks is impressive. And you could definitely tell that there's a lot of homages to what Alfred Hitchcock did in the past. And it definitely shows it here. It just shows how the greatness of David Fincher as a filmmaker as a whole. And to come off of Fight Club and then do a movie like this is really impressive stuff. It's a very solid film. Very good tension-filled movie with a lot of great performances all around. Visually, it looks incredible. It's a really fantastic film. I give this movie a lot of credit for doing what it was able to do. And it's David Fincher, man. David Fincher does not usually make a really bad movie, with the exception of this first film he ever did. But other than that, though, he's been rock solid ever since then. I mean, Seven, Fight Club, now Panic Room. And we're just getting started with him because he's got more great movies coming up down the line here that we're still going to take a look at. But Panic Room is a winner. It's an incredible film. Can't recommend this one enough. So with that said, let's move on to the next movie, Disney's latest sports film, and that is The Rookie. But it's G-rated. I mean, it's not going to sell to anybody because it's rated G. I mean, this is how the way the world works now, I guess. I mean, of course I'm just kidding, because this is back in the day when the G rating actually meant something. I mean, I don't know. I've talked about this long enough. I've done videos talking about the rating system and how it's so screwed up, but But I digress. Let's talk about The Rookie, which was actually the first sports film after Disney made Remember the Titans, and it kind of became a tradition to have a new sports film from Disney every couple of years, because after this we'd have Miracle, and then following that Invincible, Glory Road. Most of them were pretty good movies, but in this film in particular, it's based on the true story of Jim Morris, who debuted in Major League Baseball at age 35, and has Dennis Quaid as Morris, who's a Texas high school chemistry teacher and coaches on the school's baseball team. He's always loved baseball as a way of motivating his players. He agrees to go on a professional tryout if they win the championship. He once had aspirations to become a professional baseball player, but an injury brought that to an end. Sure enough, the 39-year-old father of three finds himself in the camp of the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, and he somehow seems to have regained his pitching arm, as easily throwing a 98-mile-an-hour fastball. Signed to a contract he holds in the minor leagues while his supportive wife stays home raising their children. He soon finds himself called up to the big club and pitching for Tampa, which is in Texas, playing the Rangers. And this is based off of a true story, and kind of falls into predictable, typical sports drama territory. I mean, it's pretty much a similar storyline to something like Remember the Titans. It's an underdog story, but the performances overall are really good and do carry the weight of the movie. Dennis Quaid, I think, is very good in the film. You also have Rachel Griffiths from 6 Feet Under, Jay Hernandez, Brian Cox, a young Angus T. Jones, pre-Two and a Half Men. I mean, it's a very entertaining and heartfelt story that doesn't really force the emotions onto you. It makes for a very enjoyable movie. And like I said, it's a rated G movie that is really could be made for adults nowadays. Like, it would still get a PG rating nowadays, but the fact that it got a G rating is pretty impressive to think about. It just goes to show you how the G rating used to be back in 2002 compared to now in 2024. I mean, it's just, again, but that's a topic for another time. If you want to go check out the video I did for that, I'll put a link down below. But yeah, bottom line, the rating system is pretty screwed up, pretty much. But The Rookie is a good movie, though. I do highly recommend checking it out. I mean, it's a generic sports drama, but the performances and the storyline, I think, are very interesting enough to carry the load of the film to make it something that's worth recommending. It's not another Remember the Titans, but it's a good film nonetheless. So with that said, let's move on to our next movie, and that is Clock Stoppers. A movie that, if you didn't have the Nickelodeon logo at the beginning there, you probably wouldn't have even known that this was a Nickelodeon movie. But we have Clock Stoppers here. Clock Stoppers is a film that's directed by Jonathan Frakes, who had done the last two Star Trek movies, Star Trek Insurrection, which was not that great, but Star Trek First Contact, which was an amazing film. He mixes laughs with thrills in the sci-fi adventure film, with Jesse Bradford playing a kid, an ordinary teenager, who suddenly obtains extraordinary powers when he stumbles upon a mysterious wristwatch-type device that can literally stop time in its track. And basically, as they say in the movie, time isn't really stopping. Everything's just moving really, really fast. And sometimes the way they kind of play that out, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but most of the time, you do kind of get a good sense of it throughout the course of the film. But it's the perfect gadget to impress Francesca, played by Paula Garces, who was of Dangerous Minds, and most well known to many people, including myself, as John Cho's girlfriend and later wife in Harold and Kumar. And she's the beautiful new foreign exchange student at school, which she was nearly 30 years old at the time. I mean, kind of like with last week with Sorority Boys, like, they try really hard to get these 25 to 30-year-olds to make you think that they're either in college or high school, and I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't work out that well, but I digress. But let's get back to the plot here. But to those more passionately familiar with the incredible timepiece, a hapless scientist played by Fred Stewart, and his sinister boss played by Kyle Reese himself, Michael B.N., the ultimate power of the entire world literally lies in the hand of whoever possesses this amazing apparatus. They want it back at any cost, and that's when Zack and Francesca find themselves unwillingly swept into a thrilling high-tech race against time. And this is a concept that's been done over and over again in TV, but never with a budget of a motion picture before. And it works for the most part. It's a very interesting concept that could make for a very interesting film, and a good film in general, and I think the movie does that very well. The young cast does work very well off each other, even if you can't buy the fact that these are clearly supposed to be high schoolers. It's funny because French Stewart is usually seen as the goofy one with his work on Third Rock from the Sun, but he has a more laid-back role in this movie than we're used to seeing. It says something when Michael B.N. is the one who's more over the top in a movie than French Stewart is. I mean, that's incredibly hard to top, but sure enough, that's exactly what happens in here. The effects when the characters are frozen in time still hold up very well after 20 plus years, and for the time, it works. When you see the main characters interacting with the frozen timeline, it's impressive how they blend together, and it does work very well in the scenes when it needs to. It has some corniness, too, like the music is clearly late 90s, early 2000s stuff. I mean, there's Blink-182, there's a bunch of songs in this movie that clearly are of the time period. It definitely does have its flaws to it. Like, you could definitely tell if Jonathan Frakes had more control over some scenes when Nickelodeon had control over what other scenes they could put into this, such as the lackluster bullies, which Michael Biehn is more of a bully than the bullies that are actually bullying the main characters in here, and a bizarrely ridiculous club scene in which you have Zach and Francesca trying to help their friend Meeker, which is already weird enough on its own end, by slowing down time to make it seem like Meeker is doing these crazy dance moves, even though the watch isn't supposed to make people invisible, or at least they didn't establish that before. Plus, in actuality, Meeker probably would have his brain splattered all over the place in this case, but not in this movie, which, yeah, there are a lot of flaws in this movie that ding it a lot, but there are things about it that I do really like. It does manage to keep you thoroughly entertained with its intriguing premise, a good cast, and even the ridiculously over-the-top moments get some good laughs out of you. I mean, if you take it for what it is, you can enjoy it on that aspect in particular, and at least it's more fun than the last thing that Frakes had his hands on, which was Insurrection, which is easily one of the worst Star Trek movies, if not the worst Star Trek movie ever. But Clockstoppers, I think, is fun. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last movie, which is ridiculously over the top, alright, and very polarizing. Let's talk about Danny DeVito's latest film, Death to Smoochie. This thing cost $50 million and brought in only $8 million. One of the biggest bombs in Warner Brothers history, and yet it was not the biggest bomb of that year for Warner Brothers, which, wait until we get to Pluto Nash, that's a different animal on its own right. But the trailer there kind of sums it up for you. You have Robin Williams as this disgraced former children's television host who's attempting to sabotage his replacement, played by Edward Norton, with his character Smoochie the Rhino. Also in the movie, Catherine Keener, director Danny DeVito, is in here as well as Jon Stewart. Adam Resnick, who wrote the Addams Family movies, wrote the script for this, and it's a very polarizing film. It's a film that you either hate it or you either love it, and it definitely has had that cult following, kind of like what Danny DeVito's last movie did with Hoffa and Matilda. Both of those had cult followings after they were not big successes at the time, but I mean, it really depends on your ideas of how you handle dark comedy. I mean, it definitely has a lot of dark elements to it. Robin Williams is having the time of his life, and this you can clearly see. And it's a very bizarre movie, not just in the way it's presented, but story-wise, but the way it's shot. Like, there are shots in this movie that don't make a whole lot of sense. Like, there's this, very early on in the movie, Jon Stewart's talking to these network executives, and the way the scene is shot out, I don't know if they're trying to accomplish that Jon Stewart's supposed to be this little guy, and the guys and the people sitting across from him are like big guys, because he's small, and the guys he's talking to are like taller than him, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it really feels odd. And Danny DeVito can do this type of stuff, but I don't know what was going on with this particular film. It really didn't feel like he had a clear idea of what he was trying to accomplish with the shots in this, because there are parts of the movie where you have people who are supposed to be in the shadows, and then the very next scene you can easily see him, but then they go back to being in the shadows again. It's just like, what's even the point of that? Like, the movie definitely is very odd, to say the least, and there are things about it that make no sense whatsoever. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff about it that does make it a little bit fun, a little bit on the darker comedy spectrum. I mean, there's a great moment where, Smoochie has this big concert somewhere, and the where they show it at, it's really the biggest laugh in the movie, because it just comes out of nowhere, and the way they built this up, it's just like, it's incredibly brilliant how they handle this, and little flashes of promise in this movie, and the chaotic performance of Robin Williams, I think, really ups this movie to a level where I would say I enjoyed it. But it's definitely one where you're really going to go into it, and you're either going to hate it or you're either going to love what they're trying to accomplish here. And I can't say everything about it works, but man, I thought it was fun. I thought it was a fun film. Definitely not one of Danny DeVito's better movies, but it's got its elements to it that makes it fun to watch. So I recommend it on that level. But again, if you watch it after I say you should check it out, I wouldn't be surprised if you actually hated it, because it's a film that's definitely very polarizing. Like I said, you're either going to love it, you're either going to hate it. That's just how Death to Smoochie works. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll jump into April on the next episode with 3 films. Ashley Judd and Morgan Freeman reuniting for the first time since Kiss the Girls with High Crimes. We also have Ryan Reynolds in his breakout film role, National Lampoon's Van Wilder. And Barry Sonnenfeld gives us one of his 2 movies in 2002, which was actually delayed because of September 11th. The star-studded comedy Big Trouble with Tim Allen, Rene Russo, Patrick Warburton, and a ton of stars that you are very familiar with. But we'll talk about those 3 films on the next episode. But until then, thank you so much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.